But if you make things a bit more less complex, if you sort of refocus less terminals for better terminals, if you make the infrastructure a bit more effective and efficient, hopefully it makes it easy. Come in. Good evening, everyone, or good morning to some people. Good evening to some people. And welcome to today's episode of Pioneers Pathway Podcast. You all know us by now, but maybe you've forgotten, or maybe you're new. So my name's Liam Villani, and I am joined by my co-host and great friend Shaurya. How are you doing, Shaurya?
Very well, Liam. Very well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good, and obviously, it is good morning to some, and it's good evening to some, and it's good afternoon to some. We're joined by people all across the world, aren't we? And that's great. So thank you for coming and listening to us today. We've got a really interesting show for you today. Not one of our longer ones. We're going to have a sort of a brief conversation, but a really important topic. And then be able to sort of pinpoint some places people can go and read more about. So shall I introduce what we're going to speak
Absolutely.
about
Go
today,
for
Sharon?
it.
Okay, perfect. So we're gonna talk about airports. Airports. We're gonna speak a bit about Heathrow Airport. Obviously, I'm a Londoner, and Sharia was a former Londoner. He's gone off to warmer countries now. But we were both grew up sort of in and around Heathrow Airport, and we thought we'd talk about that today, just
Yeah, absolutely.
because Sharia, having travelled a bit now, I've come to really value living close to Heathrow Airport, right? Because of all the transport links, the destinations, and things like that. And it's really you think like, it's just a place you go and catch your flight, but it's more than that, right? And it serves so much more of a purpose, like than just flying people on holiday, right? It's financially, but also sort of politically, geographically connects us to so many places in this world.
I mean, even like that's just one aspect of it. Just think about how businesses, there's so many businesses you see at the airport, right? And businesses change their core competency. Look at WH Smith, right? Everywhere else you go, most of the time they just sell books. But the minute you go to the airport, they're suddenly selling sandwiches, they're selling, all these other, bits and bobs. So, it's quite interesting to see how businesses adapt suddenly as soon as they're at the
Bus-
airport. They also try
The
to,
businesses. I was just going to say it's also the businesses employ a lot of people who then live around
absolutely.
the airport and creating those sort of ecosystems around the airport, right?
Absolutely, and Heathrow has always been one of the most important airports in the world because obviously given its prime location, and look, it's been around for a long time. It's played its role, but recently there have been a few issues with it, haven't hasn't there? And
Yeah,
there's been lots
yeah.
of debates and controversy surrounding it, isn't it?
So yeah, no, it's a controversial thing because we've seen massive infrastructure projects in airports like Dubai, but also all across the world, and they've expanded capacity and expanded the infrastructure. But Heathrow sort of lagged behind on that. It's still got just its two runways. It's had that for the last I don't know, for recent history, right? And it's come to capacity, and there are growing calls for it to either sort of redevelop, build new airports, expand, get the third runway. But I read somewhere there was a news article out. Maybe we'll try and link it up on our posts. But the boss of Virgin Atlantic, Shai Weiss, he sort of came up with a really interesting idea, which was to break up Heathrow, right? And I thought that was really interesting, right? Because they said Heathrow Airport, with its bureaucracy and its sort of single management, isn't working. So let's say one airline gets one terminal and they run that terminal and they can compete against each other and see and hopefully that means that things progress and things develop a bit further. I don't know if you've got any opinion of that on that.
Look, well, first of all, I don't really think that's necessary. Look at Dubai,
Okay.
right? Dubai primarily, is owned and operated by Emirates. But that doesn't mean loads of other airlines aren't able to operate successfully. And the thing is, right, Dubai only has three terminals. Heathrow has five. The fifth
Mm.
terminal is already used by British Airways. So I think that idea is already in effect in a way.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, no. You know, you're completely right. You're completely right. But it just means that sort of there's not no single management. You can tailor the airline, the terminals to the airlines, make it more personalized, and you can sort of progress a bit further because things are falling behind. They're not as it's not as futuristic as it has been. Infrastructure is lagging behind. There's problems. It needs a bit of a facelift, doesn't
Well, I think then there needs to be a complete structural change, right? I think it has to be something a bit more drastic than having, one terminal dedicated to one airline, right? Because I just think that's going to make a complete mess of things. And already in London, you have what, five different airports? You got Heathrow, you got Luton, you got Stansted, you got City of London, and you got
it?
Gatwick.
Southend.
Southend
Gatwick,
as
Southend,
well,
there's
exactly.
quite a few,
So
yeah.
there-
Um,
there's a lot, right? So I really don't know if this is the right policy. You already have divisions where you have your shorter haul going from Luton, Southend, City of London. So you already have these divisions in place, right? So it needs
mm.
a completely different change, in my opinion. What that change will be, I guess only time will tell. But yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are to see. I think there needs to be we've got loads of airports, but do we need them all, or can we sort of make a couple of mega airports, right? Because at the moment, if you're flying from Luton and then you've got a connection at Gatwick, it's not the easy, right? If when everything's spread out, and the only real major international airports are Heathrow and Gatwick. They are the ones where you do the majority of your international flights. Most of them are sort of short haul, low cost carriers. So there is a big difference there. But it's just sort of yeah, airports are a gateway to a country. And when people arrive, they need to feel like you're entering into your country and you're entering into a place where you want to be. And when you arrive in Dubai, the grandeur of it and the scale of it and the efficiency makes the country look good, and you make it look good. And I just don't get that feeling when you go to Heathrow. You sort of you come in and you think this place needs to change. And especially if you're just transiting via Heathrow, all you're going to see is the airport. And does that really give a good look for what Britain is all about?
Okay, there are two very interesting points you raised there. One is the idea of opening additional mega airport. In the UK, we have a huge issue of land, right? You have all these greenfield lands and brownfield lands. So the problem is, if you do try build another airport, well, first of all, where do you build it? Because we also have to think about the fact that we also try to increase housing as well. There's already an issue with shortage of housing, so that's one issue that you have to deal with, right?
Mm.
We'll put that to the side for now. Then the second issue you brought out is Heathrow looks a bit, weathered, right? Now,
Yeah, yeah.
there's only one way to fix that, and that is capex, right? You need to really shove some money into improving Heathrow. But there's lots of problems with that. First of all, where do you get the money? Taxes are sky high. I mean, the poor, middle class have already been squeezed, right? So that's also an issue there. There are also other, infrastructure projects that also need to, be refreshed. So it's very difficult because you need a lot of investment. But where's that investment going to come from? There's only so much you can get from tax.
Yeah, yeah, no, 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 it's true. That's true. That is very, very true. But if you make things a bit more less complex, if you sort of refocus less terminals but better terminals, um, if you make the infrastructure a bit more effective and efficient, hopefully it makes it easier to invest in that infrastructure, right? I think if you use an example, you if there's no need for a certain couple of those five airports, you spend that money and you redirect it onto the existing airports, and make them better, right? And hopefully with new planes and new technologies, maybe there's more increased capacity, there's quicker turnaround times. So you don't need you won't you'll have more capacity at these airports in general anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, if we think about the idea of people talking about expanding a third runway at Heathrow, initially I was, really, for the idea, right? Let's create this one mega airport that has everything. And it's a bit of bias because Heathrow is quite close to me. But in hindsight, the issue I see with it is, look, there you have that Heathrow can get pretty crowded at times, as can any airport. But Heathrow especially could get very crowded, right? Even despite having its five terminals. So you're gonna have to expand even further. And again, that's very expensive.
Yeah. No. That is true. That is true. Um, but there's many expensive routes. Everything's going to cost money. It's whether you see it as a long-term and strong investment.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But it's all down to what the government wants. Because look, I was mentioning the other infrastructure projects. So obviously, the UK government recently nationalised one of the rail services. So this is where a lot of the money is going. It's going more on domestic. But I do agree with you. I think there should be a focus on international because, like you said with Dubai, your airport really should reflect what the city is like. Heathrow is declining,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't, be the case. It should always present a positive vibe to, the country and city where it's located. So that's why I do think, I do agree that there is, a need for investment, but I think there's a bigger change that's required more culturally as well, right? It has to stem
I
from the
can.
government.
Do you think there's a we talked spoken about Dubai? Do you think there's any other places where you think we could learn from?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Singapore is, in every article you see there, I think it's called Changi or something like that. I
Changi
apologize
Airport.
for,
Yeah.
yeah, if I've said it wrong, but their airport, every article you go, theirs is always, listed as the best in the world. Now, I don't expect the same level at Heathrow because Singapore obviously has a smaller population. They can obviously afford to spend that on an airport, right? But I think there's a decent level of things that we can learn from. So Singapore, they use a lot of AI technology. Yes, that
Okay.
will reduce the employment, but obviously there's a whole different debate for that. But look, if you use that, if you invest in AI, that's something that can be used in the long term as well, right?
Yeah.
And another airport, look, Qatar's got a pretty good airport. I'm not sure if you've been, but yeah, look,
I
even
haven't. I
example,
haven't been to Qatar, but I do know the Middle East in general. They spend a lot of money on their airports because they're seen it as a transit point.
yeah,
Very good transit.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, even if you think more on the western side of things, I've heard New York LaGuardia wasn't heavily looked favorably upon, but recently I've heard I've been there myself, and it's a much cleaner and it's a better experience at the airport than it has been previously. So look, I think there are examples all around the world. There has to be a decision from the government to say, look, it's time we actually use our taxpayers' money towards something that's more useful and that will actually help bring long-term returns, and which is a cleaner and improved airport.
No, that's good. That's good, and I think that's a really good thing to sort of conclude on. It's about future planning, but it's also setting those ambitions, right? And seeing it into the long term, which I think is really important. So I think if the readers want to and listeners want to learn more about it, there's so much out there, so much for them to look at. Netflix has a ton of documentaries about these mega airports. I know I remember watching YouTube videos about them building Dubai airport, just seeing the scale and the operations that have to go behind these airports. Truly amazing. But I think that's a really good thing just to sort of think about. It's the long-term planning. It's what the country wants in the long term, and it's no short-term feat. It's such a big project, big amounts of money you having to invest in it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, the airport is, in a way, it's the center, right?
Yeah.
it demonstrates what sort of intentions you have. Dubai has shown that look, we have this huge airport. We made it very welcoming. That's why we want it to be for business, and that's why we want it to be for all our tourists, right?
Yeah.
London Heathrow is declining, but we can't let that affect our businesses and our tourism as well. Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right, what is the economy without businesses?
Yeah, exactly, and that's part of it. But no, that sounds perfect. So that was great. That was great. We were able to have a chat about that. Obviously, maybe we'll touch upon this again in the future. Maybe talking about another part of the transport, railway, the shipping, things like that. So we can have another chat about that because they're all really important things. And uh, for business, entrepreneurship, and things like that, transportation and infrastructure is super key to that. So I'm sure we can have a chat about that going forward. But maybe, Shaurya, shall we share some of our plans for the next few episodes, or are we going to keep them under wraps?
Yeah, no. I think we can share a little bit. Look, obviously, we do have a few interesting things planned. A couple of things did get cancelled, but we will make sure that we bring them to you. Look,
Perfect.
2025, it's going to be a huge year for us. We're going to be trying out different things. And we're going to, make sure this podcast is the absolute best it can be. And what's your goal for the channel for 2025?
It's to keep doing what we're doing and just to do it even more, right? Even more.
Okay.
We hit the ground running really well this year. We just want to keep going with our track record, and I think we will do. We've got some exciting ideas and exciting people lined up. So watch out for this space, everyone. Just some really cool things going on. So no, thank you for today, Shaurya. I hope you were able to learn some stuff, and I hope everyone else was able to learn some stuff, and we'll try and revisit that over the next few episodes as well, and bring back some themes. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next episode. Reach out to us on the usual links, and yeah, catch up with you later.
Yeah, thank you for listening.